Welcome to the Darkstream. I'm VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and Infogalactic News. Happy Saturday. It's been a busy day today, but a productive one, I have to say. We are attempting to get Rotterdam state of emergency. What's going on there? I was aware of the what's going on in Germany, but not that anything was up in Holland. Good evening. I couldn't do this last night because at this time last night I was actually doing a interview with Brittany and Tara. If you're on Gab, you probably know them, Brittany Pettibone. I'm not sure about Tara's last name, but it was a good conversation. I enjoyed talking to both of them, and both very bright young women. Slightly alarming to realize. Oh, well, that's actually good news. If the Turks are rioting in Holland, then we can expect that Geert Wilders' support is going to increase. The more things that happen, to take a slightly Leninist perspective, the worse things get, the better they'll become. Any of this sort of activity is only going to boost nationalism across Europe and in the United States as well. And so, it doesn't really matter what happens, what the proximate cause is. It's the important thing is that more and more people continue to wake up to the lie that is globalism. We actually talked a Leninist strategy. Well, not really. The Leninist strategy is to make it worse yourself. We're just observing the way in. We're observing the root cause, the root basis for the Leninist strategy. That's all. If we were going to take a truly Leninist strategy, then we would encourage the import of more and more, encourage the import of the worst possible immigrants and move them in to the most cucked, most innocent populations. Well, it is inevitable that everyone is going to wake up sooner or later. But the question is, will it be in time? And that's the larger issue involved. And so, and the thing is, more and more people are waking up all the time. I mean, I'm able to speak very openly about the kind of stuff that we did not speak openly about a few years ago. No, that's absolutely false to say that it's already too late. That's just stupid. It wasn't too late for Spain after they'd been invaded by Muslims and ruled over by them for hundreds of years. And so, it's never too late as long as you have a coherent group of people who do not accept what has been thrust upon them. And it's not even close to being too late. It's not a different day and age. That's absolutely absurd. You don't know what you're talking about, quite frankly. And you're probably one of those Americans who think, oh, Europe is done. Okay, you're gone. I'm not gonna put up with this idiot. Let me see here. That's one of the rules that was on my blog during the election. Do you have any idea how many people were telling me that Trump couldn't possibly win? People who were conservative people who genuinely wanted Trump to do well. There's this weird sort of psychology. I think it might have to do with watching sports, where if you want your team to win, but you want to have the satisfaction of being right, what you do is you predict against your own team. That way you get a positive feeling if you get what you want. No, but we're not talking about hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. We are talking about active defeatism. We are talking about preparing everyone else, telling everyone else, and predicting that failure is coming. And that is quite literally what the enemy wants to do to you. A lot of people don't understand that one of the most important functions of the military is to demoralize the fighting force of the other side. It's not to kill them. Many of the tactics utilized by militaries specifically avoid trying to kill as many people as possible. They're much more interested, they'd much rather wound somebody and take 2 or 3 people out of the equation than kill one person and leave the other 2 free to operate. And so morale is such a fundamentally important aspect of human conflict that entire libraries of military thinking and whole war games are fundamentally designed around the principle. I mean, look at these things here. I'll give you an example. These are ASL counters, Advanced Squad Leader. I'll hold this up to the camera so that you can see it. But now these are Italian troops. Okay? Here's the elite Italian troop. I don't know if you can see this or not. But do you see that the final number on there is a 7? 447. Okay? 7 represents morale. Okay? Now, your standard first line Italian troop, that's what the 1 in the upper corner is a 346. Now, so those are the Italians, right? Now let's look at the German SS infantry. The SS first line troops, they are a 468. Okay? Now, if you understand that these are ASL counters, okay? So I'm just showing you two different counters. This is an incredibly complex game. A tremendous amount of thought has gone into this game. And okay, so you see these 2 counters, right? You've got 447, or no, not even 346. The gray is the Italian, and then you see the 468 on the SS. What's the difference? What is the primary difference between the SS and the first line Italian troops? The biggest difference, there are 2 differences actually. One is their firepower and the other is their higher morale. Now, which group of soldiers was more effective in World War II infantry combat? The SS or the Italians? Obviously, it was the SS, man for man. They were probably the best fighting force in the European theater, and quite possibly the U.S. Marines would disagree, but quite possibly in the entire world at the time. Very high morale, very willing to take risks, very willing to fight, not willing to surrender. Now, obviously, the SS had a lot of negative aspects to them. Although keep in mind, we're not talking about the death camp SS, the Totenkopf SS. we're talking about the fighting SS, the combat SS. They were nasty. They committed atrocities and all that sort of thing, but they were not involved in the concentration camps and the death camps. So the point that I'm making is that the difference in military capability between one of the finest fighting forces in the World War II, the Waffen SS, and one of the worst fighting forces in the Italians, who had trouble even beating the unarmed Ethiopians, was morale. And that's why morale matters, and that's why during the election I just flat out said, if you're defeatist, if you're pessimistic, you're not going to comment here. At least you're not going to comment about your pessimism and your defeatism. And we're not getting into a discussion of World War II statistics, so drop it, folks. The point is the analogy. And I'm not interested in World War II, I'm interested in today. And I'm interested in you guys. And I'm interested in you guys understanding that it's not too late. It's very important that your morale, needs to stay high. You need to learn how to maintain your morale and maintain the morale of others. And your objective should be to continually lower the morale of the left. Continually create that cognitive dissonance in them. Continually put that pressure on them that causes them to lash out, to despair, to freak out, and to do all the bizarre things that we've been seeing them do ever since Trump got elected. Do you understand why they're behaving like that? They're behaving like that because their morale is low. Right. You have to go back is something that demoralizes them. Because when they hear that, part of them, understandably necessary, believes that, even if it doesn't apply to them. And it's true that the morale of the left is shallow and brittle. It's true that they are angry. How do we know that? Because when they are projecting, that's what they accuse us of. What's always funny, of course, is that it's not that the right is perfect or flawless. That's quite the opposite. The right quite often is rather stupid. The right is fearful. The right is very, very internally uncooperative. It is amazing to me how bad people on the right are. Whether we're talking about the stars, or whether we're talking about the grassroots, it is amazing how little ability to cooperate they have. A lot of people say to me and ask me, they say, how do you, why is your readership so effective? Why are they so able to do things? If you look at what the Dread Ilk have done, if you look at, Castalia House, and you look at Infogalactic, and you look at Infogalactic News, and you look at all these sorts of things, it is all the result of people who are willing to cooperate and contribute their time and effort. Whether you're talking about the VFM, whether you're talking about the Rabid Puppies, whether you're talking about the Dread Ilk, all that sort of thing, and if you look at the Trump administration and the Trump organization and the fact that Trump managed to get elected, it's because people were willing to cooperate. They were willing to set aside their differences. There are plenty of people in the Dread Ilk who don't agree with each other and don't agree with me. I have to slap down some of my longtime followers on a fairly regular basis because they lose sight of what's important, or they get off track or whatever. But the thing is that even the ones that even some of those that I have to slap down, they get back in line because they know that I care about them and that I'm committed to them. We have loyalty back and forth. The whole concept. But here's the thing, is that it's not, when I do that, it's not some big humiliation, and it has happened to nearly everyone. It has happened to many, many of my longest, most trusted followers. They challenge me, they criticize me, whatever, inappropriately. And so you smack them down on that, but that doesn't mean that they're not valued. It doesn't mean they're not important. It doesn't mean their opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't mean they're not part of the team. It just means every now and then you got to keep the team in line. And so, but the important thing is that people need to learn how to cooperate, to look to benefit others. Stefan Molyneux is very, very good at this. Stefan has really strongly, personally benefited me. And that's a reason why he's very popular with my followers. And it's not just me. He's personally benefited a lot of other people because he actively goes out and looks for the opportunity to do that. Okay? But that's rare. I think that people would often say the same thing about me. They see how, the people are always getting on my case for, you're shilling for Cernovich, you're shilling for Molyneux, you're shilling for this person or that person. You're right, I am. Because I believe that cooperative efforts are mutually beneficial, and I believe that it is important to build up these guys, to build up Stefan, Milo, Mike, Tom Kratman, John C. Wright, Ivan Throne, all these guys. Why? Because if they are stronger, then the right is stronger. Maybe it won't benefit me. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But that doesn't matter. Well, and it's true. Somebody says that I even have to explain this is kind of the problem. It is true, because that is one of the weaknesses of the right. We tend to be too self-interested, self-centered, and too focused on what's in it for us. Capitalism's a good thing. I'm not saying capitalism is a bad thing. I'm not saying being individualistic is a bad thing. But we have to understand the concept of enlightened individualism. We have to understand the concept of mutual benefit. We have to understand the concept of finding ways to strengthen the common ground we share, rather than focusing myopically like a laser on our differences. You know that I have my differences with Stefan. I'm an evangelical Christian. He's not. He thinks, spanking is child abuse. I think that if you spare the rod, you will probably spoil a child. We have points of difference. So what? I like and respect and trust Stefan much more than practically any other public media figure. Mike Cernovich is inclined more towards civic nationalism. Mike has a number of ideas that I don't agree with. I know that I have plenty of ideas that he doesn't agree with. That doesn't matter. Mike's advice to me has been some of the most useful and important advice that I've ever received in my life. Infogalactic would not exist without Mike. I can tell you that right now. I never would have actually gone ahead and pushed and done it with your help if it hadn't been for Mike's advice to me. You know? And so this is the thing that we need to improve. And it's also something that you can help with. You know, you guys should be, instead of looking to exploit differences. You know, I hear from people all the time, oh, did you hear what Cernovich said about Spencer? What do you think? Dun, dun, dun. You know, all this like high school bullshit. Don't do that. You know, instead, look for ways to bring things to people's attention. Look for ways to bring people together. You know, if you're a fan of mine, and you know of a right-wing writer who is maybe working on a book, tell him, hey, you know, Vox, have you heard about this guy? He's working on a book. Maybe Castelli might want to publish him. You know, if you're a fan of Stefan's and you know of some young, I don't know, musician or something, you know, go ahead and contact Stefan and say, hey, Stefan, this guy's really good. You should have him on the show sometime. You know, boost him up. Don't be an instigator. Be someone who is a motivator. And, you know, and the thing is also, don't confuse the occasional criticism, especially substantive criticism, for some sort of disavowal. Okay? You know, I criticize my authors every time I edit one of their books. I'm editing a book right now. Actually, the last 5 books I've edited, 2 of them, I told the author that actually 3 of the last 6 books I've edited, I've told the author, your first chapter sucks. You need to throw it completely out. You need to start over. You need to completely rewrite this. Now, did these people say, oh no, I'm being disavowed. Vox hates me. No. We have relationships of mutual trust. Now, John C. Wright, of course, made me feel like giving up writing forever because I said, you know, I really don't like your first 3 chapters. I think you need to throw them out entirely. You know, I think you need to do something a little bit more Susan Cooper, Dark is Rising, ominous, blah, blah, blah. And the guy, you know, I tell him this in my evening, and then the next day I get up and in my email is a brand new first chapter for the book. It's called The 13th Hour, and it's just this creepy, awesome, fantastic beginning to the novel. Much better than anything I could have written. And that's when you look at it. And the thing that's so depressing about it is you know that he did it from scratch, from the time you told him to, about 12 hours ago. You know, some people are just gifted. But the point is that if I try to keep my praise public and my criticism private. That works best. That's not always possible. Sometimes there are things that are public. You know, I certainly criticized Richard Spencer publicly because it was a public issue. But I did not disavow him. I actually had him on a brainstorm where we discussed some of these things. You know, I mean, the thing is, it is not a disavowal to say, look, I think that your media strategy is mistaken. I think that going and getting punched on camera is not the way to to motivate your supporters and demoralize your enemies. I think it actually accomplishes the precise opposite. Okay? So, but no, the left is not really that quick to disavow. They don't. You actually have it backwards. The right loves to disavow, especially the Cuckservative right. It makes them feel holier than thou. It makes them feel special. Well, yeah, William F. Buckley did a lot more than disavow. He outright engaged in purges. Whereas the left, the feminists never disavowed Bill Clinton. It didn't matter. He was sexually harassing people, raping people, allegedly, behaving inappropriately, and yet none of the feminists dropped him. None of them. The left is actually more loyal to each other than the right. Yeah, the neoconservatives, they're actually leftists. The whole neoconservative thing is just a total fraud. But yeah, the right needs to learn how to defend their own. And that doesn't mean we can't criticize. It doesn't mean that we can't hit back. Explain Milo? Ha! That would... we don't have that kind of time. But, but as far as Milo goes, Milo's my friend. I would love to publish his book. He wrote the foreword to my book. He wrote the foreword to my most successful book. He is intellectually legitimate. He is intellectually of the right. His personal idiosyncrasies are a little bit more flamboyant than most. It's not that some of it's not the sort of thing that I approve of. He's not looking for my approval. That's what it is. And so, but at the end of the day, he is a very, very powerful weapon against the left. And it would be foolish and stupid for us to abandon him, disavow him, any of those things, even just on a tactical or strategic level. Milo will not write the foreword to SJW Always Double Down because it's already been written, and it's been written by another of my allies. So, but the important thing is first of all, maintain your own morale. Secondly, work at building up the morale of others on the right around you. Third, work on tearing down the morale of your enemies on the left. If you can apply those three things, you're going to be effective. And you're going to be more effective than you can ever be on the basis of solely your own efforts. Very little of what I do, it can be accomplished by myself. I'm not only aware of that, I not only have no problem admitting that, it is fundamentally built into the way that I think and act now. And no, morale cannot be too high. I don't think anyone on the right is so defeatist and so defensive that there's almost no chance that they will ever just assume they're always going to win. The left might be occasionally prone to overconfidence. The right never. And that's the other thing that I want to mention. I'm going to close here pretty soon. But the key to winning is taking the offensive. I mean, here's what I suggest if you're conservative and you're prone to thinking about, really focusing on being defensive. Look down at your shirt. Does your shirt indicate that you are a member of the 1986 Chicago Bears? If the answer is yes, fine, stay on the defensive. If the answer is no, look down at your shirt again. Is there any indication that you are a member of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens? If the answer is yes, remain on the defensive. You'll win. If the answer is no, then get off your fucking ass and go on the attack, because that's the only way you're going to win. You will never win by playing defense. You will only win by going on the attack. That doesn't mean that you should be charging there blindly That doesn't mean that you should be an idiot, but it does mean that you need to be constantly looking for ways to go on the offensive. I'm always looking for ways that I can, tear down an SJW. I'm always looking for ways that we can build a new institution. Archiving will come. Just give it time. And so the important thing is to keep your morale high and look for ways to go on the attack. Have a good weekend. I may be around tomorrow night. Feel free to swing by if I am. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good weekend.